we're looking at penalty shootout data this week from the Euros and the World Cup football tournaments. So we've got Euros and World Cup data in two separate inputs. Our first step is to want these to be in one data source. So we're using a union here to stack those two tournaments on top of one another. And let me just show you some of the mismatched fields that we get from that when we do a union. So you can see that our winning team goalkeeper and our winning team goalkeeper, one of them has a capital T, the other one doesn't, so they don't merge together automatically. So the way that we fix that is we pick up this winning team with a lowercase and drop it on the one with the uppercase until you see that drop to merge fields pop up here, and then you drop that on top of each other and they become merged. They go to the very end, I think. Yep, there we go. And we can tell that they're merged now because they have the two colours underneath rather than this empty colour space that we have there. And we want to be able to label these fields as Euros or World Cup, and we can do that using the table names. So let's go ahead and do that in the next clean step. So to do this, I literally just used an automatic split on the table name, and Prep is really clever in these instances. It can see what's similar between the two table names, so the file path is exactly the same. For example, it is literally just the table names that are different, and it will extract for us those table names. So that was nice and simple step to do. Now we've got, with our years, we have a comma at the end of it, and our dates are all saying that they're in 2021, which we know that's not the case because we have the years here. So we need to, first of all, clean up this year, turn it into a number, and then make a new date field. So that's what we do here. We clean up our year by literally, let me just go back to this step to show you what we do. We go to the clean option here and we remove our punctuation, and then we change this data type to be numerical. So a whole number, in other words. And then to make the date field, the new date field, let's just open up that calculation. We use the make date calculation, and we do the event year as the year. We take the month of that date field and the year and the day of that date field, sorry, and that creates us our new date. And you can see now we've got dates ranging from 1970 to 2021, which is what we want. Now at this point, because I've got lots of different fields where it's telling me the winning team, the losing team, for the penalty takers, the goalkeepers, and the team names themselves, I thought it'd be easier to work with this data by pivoting it. I've seen lots of different approaches to this challenge. Some people do the pivot, some people work with it in different ways. This is just the way that I've decided to take it. I find it the easier way. So we're doing multiple pivots in this columns to rows pivot step. So we're taking the loser and the winner, and then we're taking both those taker fields, the penalty taker fields, and both the goalkeeper fields, and pivoting those. And this just means that when we come to that grouping of Germany, for example, that we've renamed this field to be team now, we can do that all in one field rather than having to do it across two different fields. So we're doing some renaming of our fields, as I said. And in this team field that we have now, we need to clean, so trim the spaces because there were leading spaces. So going to clean, trim spaces. And then we just need to find Germany and West Germany and group them together. So the way that we do that is I've got Germany here, I pick that up, I hold down my control and find West Germany, and then I go to the group values option there. And that will group those two together. Okay, so let's focus on that first ranking that we need to do. So the wins and the losses. So I group on my team, group on the winner or the loser, and count the distinct dates. I'm counting the distinct dates because obviously football matches happen on different dates, and it might be, I just found that the easiest metric to count that I knew would be different for each game. And then I pivoted that, a rows to columns pivot this time, so that I had those values in different fields. I make those nulls, zeros, and just add together these two columns to give us our total number of penalty shootouts that that team has been involved with, and then create that win percentage. So that is the wins times by 100 over the number of shootouts. And I should have rounded that to 0 decimal places rather than being lazy. And changing it to a whole number, which is what I did, but you should do it, round it to 0 places, so that actually rounds rather than just doing a floor function, basically, is what happens when you change it to a whole number using that option. But I still get the right results for this one, so I didn't change it. So we need to then just rank on that win percentage field that we have. It's not showing up there, but it should be showing there, and we use a dense rank to match Tom's output. And we can see here that if we look at England, then yes, they have the worst win percentage of all of the teams. Oh yeah, I did forget to mention that we're excluding anyone who hasn't won a penalty shootout. So I guess theoretically, if we remove this filter, we're not actually the worst, because some people have never won a penalty shootout. But yeah, it's pretty dire having a 22% win percentage. Anyway, let's move on to looking at the percentage of penalties that they've taken, how many have they won for each team. So to do this, we need to work out for the penalty taken whether it was scored or missed. So we use a little calculated field here saying if contains scored, then scored. If contains missed, then missed. Otherwise give us the penalty taker in case there was any other. I thought there might be some other wording like it was saved if the penalty was saved instead, but I think that just counts as being missed. I excluded all the nulls here because they're not important, because that's just where maybe I think that the nulls come about because the other team have scored more already, so then the losing team doesn't have to take the extra penalty because it wouldn't matter if they won or lost there. I won't try and explain football things to you because clearly I'm not the best person to do that. So now we have the scored or missed for each of the penalties that have been taken. Then we can group by our team, group by whether they scored or missed, count those dates, counting this time rather than count distinct, because obviously they can take up to 9 penalties in our data set, and they will all happen on the same day, so we want to count each penalty that's taken. So yeah, a count rather than a count distinct in this instance, doing the same sort of pivot, doing the same sort of calculations to get to our percentage and then ranking them in a dense way. Let's see how England fare this time. Okay, so they're not the worst, but you know, they're, let me just move this up a bit, but they have a 64% of penalties scored. Yeah, it's not too bad. They're 14th ranked in that sense. So clearly they can score penalties, just not always the higher pressure ones that actually need to be scored. And finally, let's get to that final question that we're trying to answer around which penalty number is most likely to be scored. So we're grouping just by the scored, missed, and by the penalty number, and counting those dates again, doing that pivot. And this time we can see our output, which I think this is the most interesting one actually. That these later penalties have such a high chance of being scored just because there aren't many of those instances, so clearly they're going to have a higher percentage rate. But then actually the first penalty is the most likely to be scored, joint with the third one. Interesting. What's so different about the second one? Anyway, that was what I found interesting about this data set. Hopefully you found something interesting in there too, and hopefully you enjoyed the challenge. So thank you very much for watching.